And welcome to Space Chicken, the podcast with a beard that's not fucking around. Joining me today on the panel of two, is Will. Say hi, Will.
Hello.
All right, and today we're discussing the psychology of gaming, which I feel incredibly unqualified to talk about. Like, I can talk about it from like the user end. It's kind of like the difference between a crack addict talking about crack versus a chemist talking about crack, right? So I'm totally siding with the crack addict in this one. Do you have insight? Because you suggested this topic. You're like, hey, I sent you this article that you probably only skimmed through, which I did only skim through.
And I did the same.
And now we're going to talk about psychology gaming, so go ahead, hit me.
So my thing is, you see a lot of people on Twitch, and they're like super like addicted. One, playing video games. Are we sponsored, by the way?
No.
Super addicted to one, watching Twitch, playing games on Twitch, and then following up with YouTube videos and all that stuff. So like, I started getting like these articles because, you know, Google knows my life and stuff like that, what I search. So it was suggesting a couple articles, and it was like psychology of games and how game companies spend like a lot of time researching on like how to hook people into games. So we play Paladins, right? And you can see how that applies to Paladins because their loot system. It's not a pay to win, but that loot system that they have hooks you into getting more and more and playing more, devoting more hours. And then the other side is the microtransactions of that. It hooks you into either playing more or spending more real life money into getting all of these different skins. Which then connected me to like MOBAs, which are huge in like South Korea. Not the North one. I don't think they play games there. Which is huge in South Korea.
They play a real life MOBA. They put five dudes on one side of the field and another five dudes on the other side of the field, and they try to make them run through the minefields to get to the DMZ. Go ahead.
So in South Korea, they actually have like recovery areas, like programs, like their own version of AA meetings, which I found crazy because you literally have a problem if you're that addicted to playing video games that you need to go to meetings and talk about this and then find out a way to like become less addicted, like, you know, recover and get a little coin that you can like boast about and stuff like that. So that was the whole thing behind me sending those articles, because I was like, are we kind of like falling into that trap? Because I felt like a little bit of that when we were playing Smite. We're super addicted, and I was just telling you about this today that one of the things that I wanted to do the most in Smite was to get the Raw America skin. So I kept playing, and I got a bunch of other skins other than the Raw America skin. I got the the Stargate skin. And I was super addicted to playing it until I eventually saw the Raw skin in a loot box thingy, whatever it's called, the little crates that they have.
Chest. Mm-hmm.
The chest, and I actually spent the gems, which were real money, from one of the sales that they had for gems, and I actually spend it so I can try and get the Raw America skin. So I kind of fell victim to that, and then I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, they spend so much time and are so good at like hooking us to playing video games that it's insane. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so a couple notes. One, you don't have to equate it to AA. There's a word for what they go to. It's called rehabilitation or rehab. You could have just said that instead of going, it's like AA. No, it's rehab, right? It's rehab for gamers. South Korea, by the way, the country that had that dude die when he went through a marathon of StarCraft? Do you
Yeah,
remember
that's
that?
insane.
Same
Yeah,
country. So addiction, generally speaking, there's two types of addiction when it comes to stuff that we're kind of like are familiar with. One is a chemical addiction. Right, very familiar with like drugs and stuff. You get chemically addicted and chemically dependent on things like alcohol, um, crack, weed and stuff. You could have a chemical dependency. And then there's things that are mental dependencies where you create a psychological dependency. And they both kind of do something similar, which is it's about like your pleasure sensors in the brain piece. So dopamine and other amines and dopamines and whatever. Releasing those at regular intervals. What you're talking about like progression systems, right? Like progression systems are so good at this. There is something utterly satisfying about leveling up. Like in any video game you ever play, like there's something
a perfect
about
example is
leveling
Destiny.
up that is like super super important. We'll talk about we've spoken about Destiny in length before, but I'm glad you brought that up. But I actually want to bring it back to like World of Warcraft. Yeah. Right, so back in the WoW days, like they continued to always kind of say, "Hey, here's a few more levels you can level up. Hey, here's a few more levels you can level up. Hey, here's a few more levels you can level up." Because there's something about going bing and then adding points in the street and all that happens like makes you feel good. Now, what you're going to say about Destiny has to do with the loot, and it was very funny, and I said this in the Destiny's videos we made early on in this podcast series, when Mike used to be on the show, that that whole thing was you were taking first person shooter people and bringing them into like RPG looters, right? Shooter looters, right? They weren't ready for that. They were like Halo people and Call of Duty people, and they were like, "Hey, I want to play a space shooter," and they're like, "What is this grinding for guns nonsense?" And it eventually leveled out where you got the shooter looter people, the people who used to play Borderlands, right? Like I'm a Borderlands guy, right? I loved Borderlands too, and it was always about give me something purple. You know what I'm saying? Give me something orange. Don't give me no blue shit. Don't give me no green garbage. And God help you if you drop the white. I'll reload the scenario just to kill you again for dropping a white piece of loot. And that kind of stringing you along is definitely a thing in games, and it's by design. There's so you got me thinking now, right? Of all the types of games, right?
The gears are turning.
I
see it.
I like to play. There's a few. There's the roguelikes, right? So the roguelikes, a big thing with them is permadeath, right? So you're like, that's a really big deal when you're playing these games, a la Wasteland 2 or XCOM, which are two top-down roguelikes, whatever. But they have permadeath in them. We did a whole episode on permadeath. You guys can go back and see how we feel about permadeath. But there's something psychological going on there, too, where you feel the need to make your character survive. Then you have the RPG, the level up system, right? But then there's a competitive psychology to it, too, which is where a game like Paladins works for me because it's asymmetrical, right? There's counterplay, and when you beat someone, sometimes you just don't feel like, hey, I outplayed this guy. Sometimes you feel like, hey, I'm smarter than this person, right? Like, dude, I outplayed them with my not just my aim, not just my mechanics of gaming, of moving the mouse and shooting and doing all that stuff, but also of, hey, you did that ability, I did this ability. You did an AoE attack, I dashed out. I turned and fought. I dropped my shield. I placed my turret in the perfect spot. And then it becomes that kind of back and forth where you're like, dude, we're doing this because we're better, not just in a I shoot them better than you, but in a I'm smarter than you.
Smarter.
And there's a sense of self-satisfaction there, or a huge point about my own ego exposed in that sentence. Either way, right? We roll with it. Then there's these little like mobile game city builders. Again, they're very much in the sense of progression systems, so they reward you for progression. But those games, they kind of string you along, right? Because you talk about Smite, right? Their whole thing,
Yeah.
their the high res's entire profit model is based off of you wanting to buy vanity items, right? But there's something
Yeah.
else that like the kind of like the communities in themselves make, and that if you don't keep up with the vanity items, you kind of look a little silly,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
It's
it's
to a degree it's like a status. Like I've
yes,
been playing
very
this
much.
long enough because I remember in Smite, I think it was what season 2 that we came in on, and
Hmm.
at season 2, if you got enough of the chest, you would get the platform. So you
Right.
remember that the little
Yeah. So what Hyros would do is they would hold events in Smite, right? And it would run two things, right? Every step of the event you would pay for,
yeah
right? So you would dedicate X amount of gems, and you would get a reward, a vanity item, a skin, a loading frame, an overlay, something like that, right? But as you progress through buying stuff, you got bonuses, right? So it's not just that you're getting it, but hey, you get three things on this list. We're going to give you this fourth thing for free. When in reality, it's not free. Nothing that anyone ever tells you is free. Like if they go, hey, buy this, we're going to give you some free fries. Like, no, the price of the fry is included in what you purchased already. It's the same thing like this. It's not that, hey, once you spend 1,200 gems, you get the skin. No, four skins actually cost 1,200 gems when you do the math, right? Because
yeah
every
yeah
however many things, and I'm not knocking them for it. I'm just kind of explaining the way that it's just kind of like, hey, your brain goes a free thing, even though it's not free. And what they always did was there was a collection bonus. And the only way you could get this skin, which they usually put a lot of work in, and which is probably pretty cool, the only way to get that skin was to get everything in the collection to unlock it. Which means that even if there's stuff you don't want for characters you don't play, if you want the collection bonus,
it was still
you'll buy into the event and you'll get
yeah
every single piece of the event. And
yeah
there's some psychological play there. The other thing they do is they put really cool stuff that you can't buy it. Right? You can't just straight up
yeah
buy it. You have to. Here's a chest, and in this chest there's 20 things. One of the 20 things is the thing you want. So
and
just
that's how they got
keep
me for the
on
raw
buying
America.
chests until yeah.
Yeah.
But to be fair, everything in that Raw America skin was dope because it also
Yeah,
had
it was the
it
voice
also
pack
had
and everything.
that Fourth of July Zeus, which
Hmm.
was just no joke. Just going electric justice just goes a long way to the enjoyment
See,
of
but
that game.
that's a perfect example of what we were talking about because um that that chest, right? I think it was something like 30 something, right? Out of 30 items that you could possibly buy with real money, three of those things you actually wanted to go out of your way and get, right? So it hooked us into buying maybe 15 out of those items, 20 out of those items, and then eventually get the one that we actually really wanted. I'm not saying the other ones were garbage, but they weren't tailored to specifically us, you know? But because they created this system, and now because we're silly, instead of saying, I just want to buy this one, take my real money for this one, we bought into this idea that, oh, this is like a almost a slot machine where I could just go ching 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 and then eventually get what I want. So they actually took way more of our money for items that we literally didn't want.
Yeah, but that's also the psychology of gambling, though. So like on top of that, you get the psychology of gaming, but you get this gambling aspect that goes with it, kind of like a sub game. And while the whole time you're actually enjoying the game, you're actually games like
Yeah,
Smite, right? Which MOBAs in general can go very poorly, right? So like I've been in
yeah.
League of Legends matches, and for the record, again, you'll get no. I'm terrible at League of Legends. I was decent in Smite, but in League of Legends, I was terrible. Heroes of New Earth,
That's,
fucking garbage. I was very terrible at that. Dota, fuck a Dota.
Dota.
Right up Dota's ass. All of those
Whoa.
games, I was just terrible at all of them. But in Smite again, Smite I was decent, but you'd play these games and you would actually have very, very bad experiences. You would have bad experiences with the community. You would have bad experiences in the game itself. Like, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on? I don't understand. The strategy in here is so in depth and nuanced that I didn't understand what's going on. But you keep going back and playing. Like, you could literally have an hour and 20-minute match of getting your teeth kicked in, and then you're going to go back in and go, yeah, I'll queue up again. And I'm like, that's terrible, because you were literally just went through near 90 minutes of misery, and you're like, no, I'm going to recommit to either. And the reason for that is because winning those games, right? Winning in Paladins, winning in MOBAs, winning in Overwatch feels so good. Like, it feels legitimately good to crush in those games, and to crush in those games, by the way, that you feel good winning a close match, but there's something about like putting your foot on your, like, so just right before we came on, I played a payload, right, we shoved the payload down their throats in 2 minutes. We just shoved it down their throats, and then when we were on defense, we didn't let them get out of the base. We were like, you guys don't get to play. Like, you don't. Only one team is playing. We're playing. You guys don't get to play. And I felt great. I felt fantastic. It felt good. I'm there watching the clock. I'm like, the clock is ticking. The payload hasn't moved at all. You guys are going to get crushed. Like, a minute in, I'm like, dude, you guys have a minute to go the whole length? I don't even think unchallenged you could get it there in a minute. You know? But that feeling is, like, so good. Like, being... like, that winning feeling is so much better than the rest, and then that's what you come back for in games, those competitive.
So to a degree,
games.
you get addicted to that piece.
Yes, but you, what I guess the bigger point I'm making when we talk about addiction, like, the problem with addiction, right, is how it interferes with your life, right? So, like, when this whole Trump thing happened, and by Trump thing, I mean him being elected to the highest office in the United States of America. A lot of people were accusing him of having a mental illness, and after talking to a lot of, like, brain doctors, right? One of them pointed out that you can't for you to have a mental illness, right? That thing that everyone thinks is a mental illness has to be debilitating to you, right? So you have to have anxiety to the point where you can't cope in society. Like, that's a disorder, right? But if you have OCD, right? But you apply it to work, and because you apply it to work, you actually end up being super attentive and able to like go through all of the detail and make sure everything's perfect, and that actually causes you to advance in the workplace and doesn't affect your personal life in any way. Because there's layers of OCD. Like, not everyone who has OCD is flipping light switches 5 times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Doing
there's different levels, different
Macarena with slippers. Some people just like to be clean. Some people's OCD manifests in cleanliness, and therefore they do. So, like, it's if they're doing that and it's not debilitating to them, we could call it OCD, but it doesn't fit the characteristics of a mental illness because it's not debilitating. And the same thing works with. I'm going out on a limb here, people, right? But the same thing works when we talk about addiction, right? You're drinking, no matter how much you drink, isn't a problem until it fucks with work or family. 100% of the time, right? What's the difference between how much I drink and sleeping in on a Saturday, right? Whether if I was like, hey, I'm going to do it Monday and be late to work on Tuesday. That's when it becomes a problem. Even if my total consumption stays the same, it's the way it affects your life. The same thing works with gaming, right? Those people in South Korea you talk about, the people who, like, died because they wouldn't get up and go to the bathroom or whatever the hell it was, or they had a cardiac arrest. I forget the details of that one. That interfered with life. Like, that stopped them from doing things. That South Park episode where they were all grounding and killing warthogs in the forest when they were doing that World of Warcraft one, and they had to shit in buckets and stuff, and like, that's debilitating. But
such a good episode.
But, like, I play a lot of video games, but I think about video games when I'm not playing video games. Like, I sit on the Steam store and just look for video games to buy, and I do, like, buy games and then play them for like 3 hours and then never finish them. I have so much unfinished games, like, in my library in total. As long as I'm not spending money I don't have, or neglecting my family doing it, then it's not like we get to that thing that if we're gonna say that addiction is partly in mental illness, right? Which is now a premise I'm throwing out now without establishing it in the past, but understanding what addiction is, right? And having the fact from one article I read one time about Donald Trump about his psychotic behavior not being a mental illness because it hasn't been debilitating for him in life, then I would say that in order for a gaming practice to be considered an addiction, it has to also fit that criteria being debilitating to your life or fucking things up for you.
Impairing you from doing other things.
Yes, indeed.
So you're I see what your point is. I kind of want to take it back to what you were saying before.
Go ahead, I dare
about, you. And it was the connection that I was trying to make was for Destiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Destiny, I can't remember the guy's name, whatever it was.
Mark.
Luke something.
Okay.
He literally came out and said they're going to buy the game regardless if we give them garbage because people are so hooked, right? And this was when I think it was the third expansion was coming out or the second expansion, whatever it was. He came out and said they're so addicted that doesn't matter what we do, they're going to buy it. And yeah, people were at an uproar and oh my God, and this and that. They literally created a wall to the original game that you had purchased, and people still, even though that was the case, they blocked them from some of the content from the original game, went out of their way and purchased the expansions, even though they knew what they were getting.
So, if you guys listening right now want the full cap of that story, go check out our other YouTube channel, No Right Answers Gaming, and go back into the Space Chicken because this podcast used to be on that channel, and then just go back into the archives, and there's one there about Destiny and the paywall. We looked a little different. The background was different. The actual software we're using to record was different. It might seem a little wonky. Like the whole thing is like, wow, what a different feel and sound quality. But we go in depth onto that paywall expansion that he's talking about, and it's the primary reason why I stopped playing Destiny. But
see, you went the other way and you were like, no, I'm not gonna do this. Other folks, one that can't defend himself, Mike.
Yeah.
He was so hooked on the Destiny gravy train, right? The grinding and everything Destiny that, in some podcasts, he was quietly in the background going to town on his Destiny.
Yeah, that's true, but I wouldn't consider Mike an addict either over the rules that we just say because it wasn't debilitating for his life, and also he was an early adopter, so the paywall would have never affected him. I was just at the time I didn't have $30 for either. I feel like you just did. I feel like you called him an addict, and I feel like he can't defend himself, which is fucked up. It's fucked up because he's not on the show right now, and you're calling him an addict. You're calling him a dirty Destiny junkie. Do you understand?
I didn't say any of that.
DDJ. That is so gross.
He should come on more often and defend himself. All right, it's not our fault that he wanted to take a business trip.
Hey, whatever. Right? But it goes through a lot of stuff like.
But the thing is, I wasn't calling that an addiction. I was referring to that as they hooked him so good. The psychological game that Bungie played, right, to get people hooked to the point that they can say whatever they wanted and have someone like Mike, no offense, continue to pay and defend them, even though we can clearly see that this is what they did. And the thing is, he was saying all of these things. Hey, they're going to buy it no matter what. The pitchforks came out, the torches. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe Bungie said that. And immediately the game was sold out.
So this feels like a hit job on Destiny and Mike, and I'm not going to be part of it. Yeah, like I'm not going to go down this road with you. Like it's borderline slanderous, dude. I don't know this article that you keep referencing that you don't have adequate details of. Some dude, I don't know of his name. I think his name was Aaron
Hold on.
Bungie.
Well,
I have no idea. He said that people who use our products are garbage humans and should be killed. And it's like, dude, I'm not interested in getting into this flame war. But I do though want to explore one of the points you were making, right? So there has to be some games, right, where they go in and the thought process is, how do we buy these people's brains? Right?
yeah, which is at the core of everything we're talking about.
And I think the easiest and most relatable portion of this is mobile gaming on the phones, because bigger AAA titles, right? They have less of it, right? Because most stuff on we'll call it big screens, right? So we'll call the phones the little screens. We'll call TVs computer monitors, big screens, right? Because whatever, no one's playing in a movie theater. So there's an idea that the bigger screen titles by themselves, a lot of them cost money. Then there's the free to play ones, and what they do is they some of them try to instill a vanity system that hooks you, a la Smite, right? And then others have systems very similar to like pay to win models where you feel better about paying, and then others just try and trick you into subbing, right? A la the Old Republic, which was initially sub based and then went free to play, and then they were like, hey, you can't have any action bars unless you pay me $5, and it becomes this entirely different and sick thing. But on a mobile gaming front, they all have double currencies, right? And they all hook you with this immediate pleasure. Like, all right, we're gonna build a farm. All right, build a chicken coop. Chicken coop builds in 2 minutes. All right, awesome. Give me some eggs. Eggs build in 5 minutes. Like, all right, cool. All right, build me some cows. Like, all right, build some cows. All right. Build some wheat. Like, all right, cool. All right, get some milk. Like, okay, cool. Next, 30 minutes pass. You gotta, all right, make some bread. You combine all the ingredients, you make some bread. Hour and a half. Hey, you want to go faster? 2 gems.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta go 2 gems. Be like, all right, how do I get gems? Well, you get gems at certain milestones in the game. Once a week. And then after 4 weeks, it turns into once a month. And then after 2 months, it turns into once every 50 years. Except for on leap years, then you get nothing. Right? Or $5. And then all of a sudden they start milking you because you want to go faster. You get addicted to the pleasure of collecting and filling lists, right? All those games are the same thing. It's like, here's a list of things. Get me the stuff on the list. You've completed the list. Here's your new list. And it feigns this sense of accomplishment over time. And that definitely does hit a sense of the brain matter, because like everything you do, you kind of want to accomplish something, right? Like that's how you measure success. You're like, all right, I need to do this. I did this. I did this. Here's my list of things to do today. And meanwhile, in your hand, you can go, bro, I just made 50 cakes. I'm the best. I'm a goddamn baker on the thing. And it also puts it so that you can't progress into the next list until the previous list is done. Meanwhile, they're also, in a lot of these games, overburdening like your ability to keep supplies. So it's like, hey, this supply at the very beginning of the game is super easy to get. You've got tons of it. But this particular thing later in the game, which is more difficult to get, you no longer have room because of all of these old early supplies that you need. But you still need those supplies to build up all the way up, because there's like a goddamn weird evolution chain of supplies that go up to get you whatever it is that you need. And that also ticks on a lot of the brain stuff. Petered out there.
So you have mentioned mobile gaming a lot, but you haven't mentioned the game that we ourselves fell victim to, this psychological thing, right? And that's the Star Wars game, the elevator one, right? You remember that one? It was for well, they had it, I think, for the other mobile stuff, but we used to play it on Windows. You remember Star Wars elevator? You go up and down in the Death Star, and you get different levels.
Oh yeah,
there we go.
Yeah. But you don't fall for it if you So the the trick is for those types of games, for those mobile games, if you don't spend any real money, you don't fall for it.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
But they hook you.
I literally stopped playing. The reason I'm so familiar with these games is because I've played a million of them, and I literally played them up to the point where they're like, "All right, this house you build is gonna take 3 weeks to build," and I'm like, "All right, so then I'm gonna uninstall this game and move on to the next thing that I can play while I'm taking a shit at work, because that's the dream. That's the goal of any of this stuff, is just to help pass time."
But how long did you play that game for?
A month. I usually play those games for like a month.
They hooked you for an entire month because that was Death Star or something, whatever it was called. I played that for a good long while. I'd probably say maybe 2 months. And the thing was, they hooked me so good that I was checking my phone just for that game on like a daily, possibly even hourly basis.
Did you spend any money?
No, but I thought about it.
All right, then.
Just because I wanted to just like
Then you came out on
run
top, bro.
that clock.
That's literally all that matters. Like, they can get you to the point, but if you didn't spend any money, then you come out ahead. And if you do spend money, it's it's your prerogative, whatever, man. You're an adult. As long as you're not spending money that's gonna like feed families and shit, it doesn't matter. And you can spend money on whatever they want. But when you talk about when they had you hooked, again, like when we talk about it, like when the levels of addiction is like, all right, I played something over and over and over again, and then I stopped.
That's true.
That's not addiction. You know what I'm saying?
It's not.
Like addiction is also part of it is characterized by the withdrawal part of it, right? Because you got to have to go through the full circle. So it's like, what is it like not doing a thing? Like,
That's true.
is it bad? Like,
But
are you
I don't know. I
itching to
think
do the
they
thing?
got you good because you went from one of those games to another.
Yeah, but actually, I don't even play games like that anymore. Period. But that stemmed from something
Tried
else.
to trap you.
That came from like growing up playing city builders. I used to play a lot of city builders of all types, like a Rome, the old SimCity stuff, and those were always fun. And all of these start off at some version of that city builder thing, except instead of like time lapsing because it's a part of the coursework and you can speed up time and slow down time accordingly in order to make things build faster or whatever. It used that time to try and milk you for money. So it's just a type of game that I like to play that is available at mobile. Like if I see a game like that, I don't even consider it. I'm like, it's a garbage game because you're never gonna get to the point where you're like, hey, I got to build my city or whatever. So I feel like you're trying hard. So you tried to hit job on Mike earlier, and then like you call him a dirty Destiny junkie. And now you're trying to call me a mobile gaming junkie when I don't even use this fucking thing for games anymore. Like I don't. Like I exclusively game up here. Every time I try and find a game, I'm like, how many games of Match 3 or Builder City could I fucking possibly play on my phone?
And just to make sure that Scott doesn't go scot-free, he is an addict to WoW.
He is a WoW addict, and I haven't. By the way, I've been looking hard for a replacement for WoW in my life, and I haven't been able to find it. But anyway, this has been Space Chicken's in-depth analysis on the psychological effects of gaming on the youth of America 2020. This is Barbara Walters. If you look up, if you look to the right, you're going to see a lot of spam floating on the screen. Click the spam. The spam is amazing. Also, go visit us at No Right Answers Gaming on the other YouTube channel. This is the Tweeters. He doesn't have social media. I really don't even use social media. I'm just told I should have a Tweeters. Tell your friends about this, or don't, but tell them about this because we're very bad at advertising. So this is the best podcast on the internet. Signing off.